I still remember the day I found out. It's burned into my head so clearly I can almost taste the metallic tang of it. We were supposed to get married in 3 days. Everything was supposed to be perfect. I'd planned the whole thing, the flowers, the dress, the little vows I thought I knew by heart. But none of that mattered anymore when I walked into my bedroom and saw her tangled in my sheets, her hair a mess, lips pressed against my best friend's neck. It was like time stopped. The world went silent except for the pounding in my chest. My stomach clenched so tight I thought I'd throw up right there. I didn't even know what I was looking at first. I couldn't believe it was real. Her hand was gripping his shoulder, his eyes closed like they had all the time in the world. And they didn't even notice me standing there, frozen, staring. I dropped the bag I was holding, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the room. They jumped apart, both of them wide-eyed, caught in the act. Her face went pale like she'd seen a ghost. His jaw clenched, and for a second I thought he might say something, but he just looked away. My mind was blank. I wanted to scream, to shake them both, but all I could do was stand there, staring at the image burned into my memory. It felt like the world was collapsing around me. I kept my eyes on her, feeling the heat of my fury rising. How long? I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper, trembling with rage. She looked away, silent. That's when I saw it, something shiny on the bed. I stepped closer and saw the evidence I'd missed at first, a crumpled condom wrapper just a few inches from where they'd been tangled in my sheets. That was the final nail in the coffin. No more denial. It was there. She cheated on me with my best friend days before our wedding. I was trembling so badly I nearly dropped to my knees. My mind was racing. How long had they been planning this? Was it some sick game they played, or had it been going on for months? My hands clenched into fists, aching with the urge to smash something, anything. My voice felt thick as I spat out, "Get out, both of you, now." I could barely look at them. I saw her eyes flicker with guilt, with shame, but I didn't care. They left the room quietly, almost like they knew I'd explode if they made a sound. I stayed rooted in the spot. Every part of me was shaking, my stomach, my hands, even my jaw. How was I supposed to get through the next few days, knowing I was supposed to marry the woman who just betrayed me like that? The betrayal was fresh, raw. It felt like I'd been punched in the stomach and kicked in the ribs simultaneously. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the sheets cool under my fingertips. The scent of her perfume lingered, faintly sweet, sickly. It made my stomach turn. I looked at the condom wrapper again, the evidence of their lies, and suddenly rage overwhelmed me. Not just heartbreak, but a burning need for justice. I'd been played, used, lied to for months, and now I was supposed to walk down the aisle with her. No way. I knew I had to act. I couldn't let her get away with it, not without some kind of reckoning. I started planning in my head what I'd say, how I'd expose her to everyone. But first I had to be sure I had everything. I needed proof, evidence that I could hold over her that would make her rethink her choices, because I wasn't just going to walk away and forget about it. I wanted her to feel what I felt: humiliated, betrayed, sick. The room felt suffocating. Every breath I took was labored. I closed my eyes and tried to slow my racing mind, but all I saw was her face, her lips, her eyes, the way she looked at him like he was the only thing in the world. That image made my stomach churn in a way I couldn't describe. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms. I needed to get out of that room, to start planning my next move. I knew then that this wasn't going to be some quick revenge. No, this was just the beginning. The betrayal ran too deep. I had to make her pay for what she'd done, for turning my life into a nightmare just days before I was meant to start the rest of my life with her. I had one shot at it, and I was going to see it through no matter what. As I stood up, I took one last look at the mess she'd left behind. My mind was already forming the pieces of my plan. First, I needed the evidence, more than just the condom wrapper. I had to find out if they'd been sneaking around before. I needed to know who else was involved, if there was more to this than just her and him. I'd confront her in full force, and I'd make damn sure she understood that I wasn't the kind of guy to be played with. The worst part, knowing I'd never be able to trust her again. That trust, once shattered, would never come back. I was staring down the barrel of a decision that would change everything. But I also knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going down without a fight. The days that followed were a blur of numbness and planning. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Her lying there, her face flushed with guilt, that guilty look she tried to hide. I'd never felt so hollow, so betrayed. It was like my entire world had cracked open, spilling everything I thought I knew about her, about us, into 1,000 pieces. I started digging through my emails, my phone records, anything I could find that might give me more insight. I needed concrete proof, something I could hold over her head, something that would make her regret crossing me. I knew I had to be smart. No rash moves. Rage was a powerful thing, but it couldn't be the only tool I used. I had to think 2 steps ahead, like a chess game I wasn't sure I wanted to play anymore. The first real discovery came when I checked her phone. She'd been texting him, not just the innocent stuff I'd missed before. There were late-night messages, secret emojis, plans for meetups she hadn't told me about. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the messages. It was like witnessing her lie in words. She'd been planning this for months, I guessed. I could feel my stomach knot tighter with every word. She'd betrayed me so deliberately, so thoroughly, it was like she'd planned her escape plan right under my nose. I also found bank statements, money going to places I'd never seen before. A hotel, some fancy restaurant. That was the moment I realized how deep this went. It wasn't just some fling, it was an affair, a full-blown affair. My mind spun. How many nights had they been sneaking around? Had she been lying to me all that time? The dam broke and I felt the fury surge again. I decided I needed physical evidence to back up what I'd found. I went to her apartment when she wasn't home, knowing I had to be careful. I looked through her drawers, her closet, even her phone's backups, anything that could give me leverage. That's when I found the photos. They saved a few pictures of her and him, kissing, smiling, caught in moments that were supposed to be private. I stared at her face in those pictures, the vulnerability, the guilt, and it made my blood boil. She'd been so reckless, so brazen, thinking she could get away with it. I realized I needed a way to turn this around, to make her see she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. I started drafting a plan, one that would hit her where it hurt, but would blow everything up in my face. I knew I needed more evidence, enough to make her understand I wasn't bluffing. I also knew I had to be careful. If she found out I was onto her, she'd cover her tracks faster than I could blink. One night, I set up a hidden camera in our bedroom. I wanted to catch her in the act again, or at least get some footage that proved what I already knew. I didn't trust her to stay honest, and frankly, I didn't want to be played for a fool anymore. When I saw her walk in that night, I kept my phone steady, waiting. It was eerie, the silence in the room, the way she moved around like she owned the place. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I kept my breath steady, my finger hovering over record. When she started texting someone, I clicked record. Then she slipped her phone onto the table and I froze. What she did next made my stomach turn. She leaned over and I saw the glow of her screen. My heart pounded. What if she caught me? What if she saw I was watching? Was frozen, but I knew I had what I needed. The evidence was piling up and I was just getting started. The next morning I confronted her. I didn't bother with niceties. I laid everything out, the photos, the messages, the bank statements. I didn't yell, I just told her facts, cold and clear. Her face drained of color. "You've been lying to me," I said, voice tight. "For how long? How many nights? Did you really think you could sneak around and I wouldn't find out?" She looked at me, trembling, trying to come up with some excuse. But I didn't want her excuses. I just wanted her to own what she did. "You betrayed everything we had," I said, voice shaking with rage. "And I'm not going to let you get away with it, not without paying." That's when I decided I'd had enough. I was going to take control of this mess. I'd played my cards carefully, and now it was time to execute my plan. I told her I knew everything, that I'd gather everything I needed to make her regret this decision. I warned her that if she tried to deny it or manipulate her way out, I'd make sure everyone knew what she'd done. My voice was steady now, cold as steel. She tried to cry, to plead, but I wasn't interested. I felt numb, but also a strange sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do next. The plan wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. About showing her that cheating on me with my best friend would cost her everything. That night, I started putting the pieces together, knowing this was only the beginning. I'd turn her own betrayal against her, and she'd regret the day she ever crossed me. The plan was starting to take shape in my mind, and I knew I had to move fast but carefully. I wasn't about to tip my hand too early. The first step was making sure I had undeniable proof, something she wouldn't be able to deny or spin her way out of. I knew her better than she thought. She'd always been good at playing the victim, twisting situations to her advantage. I needed to be smarter. That night I stayed up late, digging through her social media accounts. I wanted to see if she'd been posting anything about her new relationship or if she'd been trying to cover her tracks. I found something. A message she'd sent to him just a few days ago on a different platform. It was a quick, casual note, but the tone was clear. She called him her secret, and there was a wink emoji attached. It confirmed my suspicion. This wasn't a one-night stand, it was ongoing. That was when I realized I needed to escalate my plan. I couldn't just confront her again and hope for the best. I had to set a trap, something that would make her realize I wasn't bluffing. I decided to get a fake account, something anonymous but convincing, and start stirring the pot. I'd message her, act like I was someone who knew everything, and see how she reacted. If she slipped up, I'd have her, and if she played innocent, well, I'd have more proof to back up what I already had. The next day, I did just that. I created a profile, threw in some convincing details, and sent her a message. I kept it casual at first, just asking how she was doing, pretending I was someone from her past she didn't recognize. It took a few hours, but then she replied. Her words were nervous but guarded. She told me she was busy and not interested in drama. That was a lie, I knew. She was just trying to keep her cover. I pressed further, suggesting I knew about her and her little secret. Her reply was instant. Her tone shifted, defensive. "Who is this? Leave me alone." That confirmed it. She was hiding something, and she was afraid I'd find out. I knew I'd hit a nerve. Now I wasn't just gathering evidence. I was making her sweat. Meanwhile, I started planning how to confront her with everything at once. I had the photos, the messages, the bank statements. But I wanted her to realize I had more than just bits and pieces. I wanted her to understand I was prepared to expose her completely. I also had to be ready for any manipulation she might try, so I started recording every encounter, every lie she told in response. One evening, I staged a meeting with her. I told her I knew about her affair, about everything. Her face went pale again, her hands trembling. She tried to deny it at first. "You're crazy," she said, tears welling up. But I gently laid out the evidence, the photos, the messages I'd faked, the bank transfers. I watched her crumble, her facade cracking. "You lied to me for months," I said, voice cold but steady. "You thought you could get away with it with my best friend. Do you even realize how much you've ruined?" She broke down then, sobbing, begging me to forgive her. But I was done listening. I told her that her game was over, that I'd had enough of her lies. I was going to end this once and for all. I knew I couldn't stay with someone who'd betray me so completely. I told her I'd be calling off the wedding, that I was done with her and her lies. But that wasn't the end. Not yet. I explained I had one last thing to do, something to make sure she understood the gravity of her betrayal. I was going to make her see what she'd lost. It was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. I'd planned a final move, the most humiliating, yet non-violent way to make her understand she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. As I left her in her apartment that night, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. I'd gathered all the evidence, prepared everything meticulously. I knew she'd be devastated when she discovered what I was about to do, but I also knew I needed to do this, to truly show her the damage she'd caused. I wasn't just ending the relationship, I was making her realize how badly she'd screwed up. I looked at the list of everything I'd collected. It was extensive, enough to wipe her reputation if I wanted, but I wasn't interested in destroying her completely. I wanted her to see what she'd lost, that her actions had consequences. She thought she could cheat and get away with it. Well, I was about to prove her wrong. The game was about to change, and I was ready for it. That night, I stayed awake, going over my plan one last time. Every detail had to be perfect. I knew I was close to executing the final stage, something that would make her realize she'd gone too far. I was calm, methodical, almost cold. This was about justice, not just revenge. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal without crossing the line into cruelty. I'd already collected everything I needed: the photos, the messages, the bank transfers, all the evidence that proved her deceit. Now it was about timing and presentation. I had decided I would send her a message late at night when she'd be alone and vulnerable. I wanted her to have no doubt about who was behind it. I sat at my computer, fingers poised over the keyboard. I typed a simple message that was carefully worded, enough to get her attention but not so obvious that it screamed trap. I started with a casual tone, pretending I just discovered the truth and was reaching out to get answers. I didn't want her to panic right away. I wanted her to think I was just another confused person. "Hey, I know what's been going on," I wrote. "If you want to talk, I'm here, but I think it's better if we're honest now. I've seen enough to know everything." My heart pounded as I clicked send. The seconds felt like hours. Not long after that, her reply came, a simple "Who is this?" But there was a tremor in her voice. I knew I'd hit her nerves. I responded casually, saying I'd stumbled onto some things and wanted to understand her side. I kept the tone neutral, but inside I was planning my next move. Her reply was hesitant, almost defensive. "Look, I don't know what you think you saw, but—" She started typing, then stopped. That's when I sent her some of the evidence I'd hidden in a secure folder: images, screenshots, everything. I knew it would shock her, but I had to make her see the truth. The reactions were priceless. Her fingers froze on the keyboard for a moment, then she started typing again, this time with less confidence. "Okay, I get it. I messed up," she admitted softly. "But you're overreacting. It's not what it looks like." That lie made my stomach turn. I'd caught her, plain and simple. She couldn't deny it anymore. I decided it was time to confront her directly. I told her I knew about the affair, that I'd been gathering evidence for weeks, and that I had no interest in pretending anymore. I warned her that if she tried to deny it or manipulate her way out, I'd make sure everyone knew what she'd done. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences and that I wasn't going to be the punchline of her betrayal. Her responses became frantic. She begged, pleaded, tried to claim it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, but I stayed firm. "You broke my trust, and I'm not going to forgive that easily," I said. "You think you can just apologize and pretend it didn't happen? No, you're going to face this." My voice was steady despite the boiling anger inside. Then I dropped the final move. I told her I'd be sending everything to the people who needed to hear it: mutual friends, family, even her boss if necessary. She panicked, trying to reason, asking me not to do that. But I made it clear I had no intention of letting her spin her way out of this. The proof would be out there, and she'd have to live with it. I waited, watching her reply, her face flushed with panic. I could see her desperately trying to claw her way back, but my decision was made. I was done playing nice. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about setting things straight. Once I was confident she'd gotten the message, I blocked her from all my social media. I wanted nothing to do with her lies, her tears, her excuses. I closed my laptop and sat back, feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd taken control. I'd shown her she couldn't get away with it. The following day, I went to pick up my things from her place. I left her a note on the door, a simple, clear message. "It's over. I'm taking back my life. Keys are in the mailbox. Don't contact me again." I dropped the keys through the slot, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. It was done. Walking away from that apartment, I knew I'd never look back. I'd lost the girl I thought I loved, but I'd gained clarity. The betrayal cut deep, but it also showed me what was real. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to see what truly matters. I'll never trust her again, and honestly, I don't want to. This was the end of that chapter, and the start of something new. Revenge isn't about hurting someone just for the sake of it. It's about reclaiming your dignity when everything's been stolen from you. And that's exactly what I did. The days after I left her apartment felt strange, almost surreal. No more texts, no more calls, no more pretending I didn't see what was right in front of me. I'd taken everything I needed: proof, closure, a clean break. But inside, I still felt this gnawing emptiness, like a part of me was missing or broken. It was a heavy weight, but it was also a relief. Now I could finally breathe freely, at least that's what I told myself. I went through the motions, work, some friends, trying to keep my mind busy, but the truth was I kept replaying everything in my head. Her face, her lies, the betrayal, it burned like acid in my brain. Every time I thought about her, my stomach clenched. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive. How had I not seen it coming? How did she manage to hide it for so long? One thing was clear, I needed to focus on myself now. All the planning, the obsessing, it had to stop. I decided I'd block out the noise, cut ties completely, and start rebuilding from scratch. I'd lost her, yes, but I wasn't going to lose myself. I'd get through this one step at a time. But I also knew I couldn't just disappear without leaving a mark, not just to her but to everyone who knew us. I needed to send a message, something definitive. So I drafted a simple, honest post on social media, just a few lines about betrayal and moving on. No specifics, no details. Just enough to show I'd broken free from the chaos she'd caused. The response was immediate. Friends messaged me, some offering support, others asking what happened. I kept it vague but honest. I said I'd been betrayed, that I was hurt but ready to move forward. That was enough. I didn't need to drag her name through the dirt, but I also didn't want anyone to think I was weak. I wanted to show I was reclaiming my life. I also started focusing on new hobbies, working out, reconnecting with old friends, taking long walks to clear my head. It was hard at first. Every time I was alone, her memory crept in like a shadow I couldn't shake. But gradually it got easier. I reminded myself I deserved better, that I had to start trusting myself again. One evening I ran into a coworker I hadn't seen in a while. We got to talking and somehow the conversation turned to relationships. I realized I'd been holding back, trying not to sound bitter. So I told her honestly, yeah, I got duped pretty badly. Thought I knew her, but I didn't. It hurts, but I'm moving past it. She looked at me thoughtfully and said, "You're stronger than you think." Sometimes betrayal is just life's way of pushing you to find your real worth. That stuck with me. It wasn't just about her, it was about me. About regaining my strength and figuring out what I really wanted. But the truth was, I still had a lingering anger. Not a reckless rage, but a controlled, simmering desire to make her see what she'd lost. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions, not just for me, but for herself too. That's when I realized I had to do something more. Not to hurt her, but to make her understand she'd messed up her own life just as badly as she'd messed up mine. So I formulated a plan. It was simple but effective. I'd write her a letter, not to send, just to pour everything out. To let her know she'd lost someone who genuinely loved her and that her betrayal had been her own undoing. It would be a way of closing that chapter once and for all without even letting her see it. I'd burn it afterward, a symbolic gesture of leaving the past behind. In the meantime, I kept my distance. No more checking her social media, no more wondering what she was doing. I focused solely on myself. I knew I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control how I responded. That's what mattered now. One night I sat by the window looking out at the city lights. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Not happiness exactly, but a sense of clarity. I'd faced the storm head-on and I'd come out the other side. It wasn't about revenge anymore. No, it was about reclaiming my peace and dignity. I'd taken what was stolen from me and turned it into a lesson. The biggest lesson: trusting someone blindly is a gamble. Betrayal cuts deep, but in the end, what hurts most is how you let it change you. I refused to be that broken man. I'd rebuild stronger, wiser. And I knew without a doubt that I'd be okay, better than okay. Because I finally understood my worth, not because of her, but because I refused to let her define me anymore. Next part. A few weeks passed and I finally felt I was starting to breathe again. The initial shock and rage had simmered down, replaced by a quiet resolve. I wasn't interested in revenge for revenge's sake anymore. That was a chapter I wanted to close permanently. I had learned a lot about myself, about resilience, about boundaries, and about the importance of self-respect. One day I took the keys I'd left on her doorstep and carefully placed them in an envelope. I wrote on it simply, "Goodbye." I signed my name, sealed it, and dropped it into the mailbox. That was my final act, symbolic, yes, but necessary. It marked the end of everything we'd shared, the end of trusting someone who betrayed me, the end of trying to salvage what was broken. After that, I gathered my papers, my divorce papers, my personal belongings, and filed the necessary paperwork. I wanted everything officially over, clean and clear. No lingering doubts, no messy lingering feelings. Just a decisive, clean break. I remember walking out of that office, feeling lighter than I had in months. It was a small victory, but it meant everything. Looking back, I realized that betrayal teaches you things you can't learn any other way. It shows you what you're truly willing to accept and what you're not. It forces you to reevaluate your self-worth and your boundaries. I won't say it was easy, but I will say it was necessary. Because staying would have meant letting her have control over my life, and I refused to hand over my happiness to someone who doesn't value it. In the end, I learned to trust myself again. I became more cautious, more aware, but also more confident. That experience, painful as it was, made me stronger. It forced me to confront my own limits and discover that I was capable of surviving the worst. And I did. So to anyone out there feeling betrayed, heartbroken, or lost, take it from me. It's gonna hurt like hell and you'll want to crawl into a hole and hide. But you have the strength to. Pick yourself up. Trust me. You're better than what they did to you. Your worth isn't defined by someone else's betrayal. It's defined by your ability to move on, to rebuild, and to find happiness again. As I handed over the last of my belongings and stepped away from that chapter, I realized that sometimes the worst betrayals can lead to the best rebirths. You just have to be willing to let the past go, no matter how much it haunts you. Because the future, it's waiting for you, brighter than you ever imagined. And I've learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone else, it's about reclaiming yourself. About showing up stronger than walking away with your dignity intact. That's what I did. That's what I'll always do. Takeaway. Sometimes the only way to truly win is to walk away, knowing you've taken back control of your life and refuse to be defined by someone else's betrayal.